Good morning. My name is Horace Feliu, and I'm here basically to interview a CPA and attorney, Javier Banos, and I want to thank community newspapers for actually providing this venue, which is a public service. As you know, we want to know people, and that's the idea, and especially candidates. And community newspapers have stepped up to the plate many times to introduce people that provide announcements, information, and even let us know about their platform. And here with us we have, again, Javier Banos, who's an attorney and a CPA and a resident of Coral Gables. Good morning, Javier. How are you?
Well, good morning, Mayor, and I appreciate it, you having us, giving me the ability to come in and give this information over to the public. And I want to thank Community News as well for giving us this platform to assist others in what it's going to be who has been a very challenging time during COVID, but also has been a very challenging times for a lot of small businesses and self-employed individuals. And what I would like to do today, Mayor, if I'm allowed, is
Sure.
and I want to, by the way, I want to thank Community News for the arrangement they have done. And this is the best place. They have a
Got a
glass
glass
structure. They have masks. They have provided us with temperature.
Took our temperatures and everything.
So they have done everything they need to do, truly, to make sure that this is a safe environment. And I hope every business out there has done what it has followed their lead and have undertaken this process in this way. So what I would like to do today is talk about, I'm a certified public accountant, I'm also an attorney, and try to give those out there who are either business owners, who are self-employed, or who receive PPP money, also known as the Paycheck Protection Program, that was done on the CARES Act by Congress in March of 2020 in this year, and try to help them understand what if I am your accountant and I'm your banker. What do I need from you in order to make sure that this loan is forgiven? Because here's the key thing. A lot of people received this loan. Okay, in Florida, it was over 423,000 loans, $32 billion went out to Floridians, to Floridian businesses. It helped promote self-employment for everybody. It kept a bunch of folks employed and in their homes and saved, and it allowed us to have a better economy today than the disaster that we could have had in March. So this will probably go down in history as one of the premier, one of the moments in which Congress really stepped up to the plate and really did what they needed to do to make sure that America and this country kept, was safe and was able to survive this particular pandemic. But the next step is, now what happens? What do we need to do to make sure that these loans are forgiven and everyone can receive these funds? Now, what I want you to understand, I understand you're a business owner, and to all the business owners out there, this is not just for, Coca-Cola or large business enterprises. This is for everybody who received this loan. So you could be a small business that has 3 employees. Okay, my law firm has 3 employees. You could be a small business that is just a self-employed individual who received a PPP loan. Okay, so if those are some instances, what do you need to take your accountant, and what are the rules that pertain to this process for the forgiveness? All the SBA did is that they gave a guarantee to the banks that if we follow these particular rules, and the rules are set out in these forms that the SBA has provided out to all that were issued in June.
Is there a name for that form or a
yes,
number?
I apologize. Yeah, so the original of there are 2 forms or 2 types of forms that were put together by the SBA. Okay, one is a long form that is called the 3508.
3508.
Okay? And then the one we all want to fill out, okay, is a 3508 easy, and it is easy. It's 3 pages long, and most of it is being filed in the first page. Okay.
Now, do you need a lawyer or a CPA to fill that out, or can anybody fill that out?
I mean, technically, you don't need a lawyer or a CPA to do it, and if most of these things will come through your banking institution and they will provide them to you, but I highly recommend that if you want full forgiveness, and that's the goal here, right? You don't want to have to pay $1 of this back, okay, to the bank. If you want full forgiveness, you should consult your accountant. You should definitely consult your lawyer, okay? You're making a promise. You're making a representation when you give this to your banking institution that you qualify for this particular forgiveness, okay? You're doing that on the penalties of perjury. It is like filing a tax return. If you don't qualify, okay, and you're signing these documents, God knows, okay, there could be potential
Repercussions,
liability
yeah.
and could be potential repercussions for folks. So the first thing you need to do is make sure you qualify for the particular form you need to fill out, and it's simple. Look, if you essentially kept your business in the status quo, okay, if you went from having 3 employees to having 3 employees over the 8-week period that was originally organized, and then eventually that was expanded to 24 weeks. If that's what you did, okay, the original intent of this was, let's give folks 2.5 months worth of payroll, okay, and we're gonna give them 2.5 months worth of payroll for free. Okay? So here's a loan. If you do X, you will get Y, and the Y is you will get this loan forgiven. Okay, so that was the intent of Congress. That was the idea. I think it's part of the reason we don't have higher numbers was probably because Congress came up with this process.
It was what, $32 billion worth
Just-
of
just in
stimulus.
Florida,
Part of the
nationally.
stimulus, right?
Just in Florida, nationally, is 522 billion. Okay?
522 billion.
So out of the CARES Act, this was one of the largest parts of the CARES Act. This is one of the things that Congress did to really, to really keep us all employed and keep us all safe through this entire process.
Money circulating helps everybody.
And you have to sit there in March, right? What was going to happen in March when this whole entire process was undertaken? Everyone was afraid. The market had taken a dive. There had to be something put together quickly, okay, to make sure that people were kept employed. So the idea behind it was, if you kept payroll the way it was, the way you had done it the year prior, right? So if payroll was the same as it was, I believe the original number was the February 15th. If that's what you kept, you had 3 employees, okay, then they were going to give you an average of the last year's payroll for 2.5 months, okay, 8 weeks in total. And then what we're going to do is give you that particular amount for you to be able to pay everybody. Now, you could use, at that time, 75%, today, 60% of that amount for payroll. You have to use it for payroll. The rest could be used on utilities. They have expanded what utilities meant. So utility is water bill, electric bill, those are easy, okay? So, but it could also be your cable bill. You could also be your garbage bill. It could be all the things that are typically requirements to maintain the business going. And it would also be rent if you had a business who had rent. Typically, we're talking about rent of a commercial space, or if you had interest on a mortgage or the property you own as commercial space, it could also be used for those things. So this is why I tell you that you probably need to go see your accountant, okay, to do this thing.
Makes
So
sense.
Originally, when this whole process started and clients came to me to ask about what we're going to do with this process, the idea was, let's have a dedicated bank account in which this money will go into and will be spent exclusively on those items for the 8-week period. The problem was Congress essentially killed that idea when they modified the law in June and then expanded that for 5.5 months to essentially 24 weeks altogether. And the question then becomes, all right, now we have this expanded process. And the goal of that was, all right, we want to make sure that as much as possible of this amount is actually forgiven, okay? So if I am your accountant, what do I want from you? I want your bank statements from the periods in which, from the moment you receive the loan, and that is the key moment, right? So if you receive the loan on April 15th or May 1st, I want all your April statements, all your May statements, all your June statements, all your March, all your July statement, August and September, and maybe even October, okay? Because now is the moment where this process has to be undertaken. A lot of folks, a lot of my clients, a lot of people who are doing this have taken the perspective, oh, the government told us this is going to be forgiven, so we don't have to worry about it. Yes, it's true, but you do have to fill out these forms in order for this to be forgiven. There could be the potentiality that, potential for the government to say, in the near future, we're going to go ahead and just cancel these loans out, or below a particular percentage or loan amount, we're going to go ahead and completely cancel them. That has been talked about. There is nothing in writing. There's nothing passed by the federal government. There's no regulation that talks about any of these things. So we need to go out there and make sure we don't have to pay this money back to the federal government. It was originally a very simple loan. Okay, it's a 1% loan for over a 2-year period. If you got it after June 5th, it would be a 5-year period. No collateralized, no personal guarantee. So a lot of folks say, well, this money can be used to sort of keep my business afloat. Okay, I had a particular lady who has a beauty parlor. Well, no one was going to the beauty parlor place, certainly not in March and then subsequent to that with all the rules and all the closings that came out from this process. So she said, what do I do? Should I just use the money to keep the place afloat, and then I'll pay it afterwards? My message to her was, look, right now it's a 1% loan, okay? But if you don't do the forgiveness process, it's a 101% loan, okay? Because you're not getting any forgiveness, right? And you could get 100% forgiven. So you have to think about it in this fashion. If this is not done, if this process is not undertaken, if you don't assist your accountant and your banker, and to some degree your attorney to make sure you're complying with the process, then you may end up in a situation where you're going to have to pay some of this back. The situation is a little more complicated for businesses that had employees who did not come back to work, okay, or couldn't come back to work. Okay, so the businesses that are going to be the primary focus, the ones that are going to be the most that they're going to apply for this loan forgiveness and going to obtain a full forgiveness of the amount of the loan, are going to be the business that kept the same amount of employees just by the nature of what they do. Okay, for example, my business, I needed bookkeepers. I needed that they were employed from home. I had everyone go to their house and have their own. I bought them computers. Everyone had computers from their homes, and they came to the office and worked that way. And I certainly was going to stay in place there. But what happens to a restaurant that couldn't have people come back? Okay. Right. Or those folks who are receiving unemployment and sometimes making more in unemployment than they were making on tip income, or they were just felt unsafe coming back to work. So those businesses are in a real pickle with regards to this process, because there were Congress was main goal, and no good deed goes unpunished, right? So the main goal was, we don't want abuse. We don't want this money to be abused. But they're also not in the process of running businesses in South Florida. It's particularly difficult because there's a lot of folks who are not in payroll, who are 1099 employees, because they don't want to receive the payroll benefits, which is always a little bit of a nightmare for accountants to handle. But what happens is, if those employees don't come back, you had to at the very least keep everyone employed with the same amount of numbers. So there's something called a full-time employee coefficient, and I kid you not, that they came up with that, okay, which essentially means, look, you got to have about the same amount of people you had before. And if you didn't, we're going to reduce the amount of forgiveness by those number of people if you don't have at least 75% of the folks that were there.
Right. So, I would imagine, though, that's pretty difficult for any government to handle, at least find out exactly if that's happening or not.
And that's why I'm telling you need to talk to your lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, it's not a simple process. It requires some mathematics. I've watched a significant amount of YouTube and webinars in which I've seen people make mistakes as they're giving the webinar. So, so it's not the calculation is not intuitive. Okay.
Right.
A lot of banks, and I'm hoping that we could do this again, but we're having a bank representative going through that process to see what they have actually done. My particular bank, City National Bank of Florida, has actually put this process through a portal, okay? And you can provide information in, and the bank would essentially do their own process, and then they will submit everything to the SBA for the SBA to grant a loan forgiveness.
Right.
The problem is the sourcing of that data. What you're going to give the bank, that's what's got to be put together in a proper fashion, and that's where your accountant comes into place.
Javier, very enlightening. Thank you. Now, you're a resident of Coral Gables.
That's correct.
And one of my favorite taverns closed, John Martin. I used to go there with my wife, and we'd have their fish and chips and a couple of beers, and there was always entertainment. And that's one of the primary staples of Coral Gables, the Miracle Mile, John Martin's. Uh, it closed. So we were very saddened. And what do you predict in terms of when going forward as far as bringing back some businesses, some more life into the downtown area? We suffer from that here in South Miami as well. And how do you foresee this whole economics? Because obviously it's going to affect our tax base, right? I mean,
It
in
is.
South Miami, it affects what the center, our town center, pays 60 to 65% of our of the taxes, and with that, that means that if that falls down or goes down, the residents have to pick up the rest.
Well, you know, particularly the restaurant you referenced, John Martin's, actually was already planning on closing. So that was a situation where COVID accelerated
The inevitable.
something that was already in place. However, you're not wrong. Martini closed. Okay, we had the Ale House close. We had a bunch of other restaurants who, some of them my friends, their parents that go with my kids to Santa Teresa, who I've had private conversations with, who have restaurants on the mile themselves. And they have really suffered. They have really undertaken that process. A great friend of mine, Commissioner Vince Lago, Vice Mayor Vince Lago of the city of Coral Gables, who I hope to join in the commission coming up in April. We had a discussion about what can the city do, what can the business do in order to maintain themselves afloat. And the city has undertaken a significant, they have gone out of their way to provide for outside sitting and permitting for restaurants, which was not something that was allowed in Coral Gables, at least not to the liberalized sense that it has been allowed to this day. And I think the Gables has also gone to his own books and try to restrict its spending to anticipate what has been and will continue to be a very trying time for the city and all its residents. But I think as business owners, one of the main things they can do is they understand there are resources out there that the SBA is providing in particular. This is just one loan package that they provided. There's emergency funding loan that they also have, which they can apply depending on the particular business, how much they make. We're talking about 25 to 150 to over $500,000 they can apply for assistance. Now, there are 30-year loans at 3.75% when they originally were put together. They are, depending on the level you are, if you're below 25, they're not collateralized, they don't require a personal guarantee. Below $150,000, they don't require personal guarantee. They're collateralized with the assets of the business, and then subsequent to that, they do require or higher than that, they do require a personal guarantee. But nonetheless,
and that would be your home. I mean, would that be part of the collateral requested?
If it's requiring a personal guarantee, yes, the SBA has a rather broad process. But to my surprise, 'cause I've done many SBA loans in real estate my wife is a real estate attorney. We've done many of them in the office. They have really streamlined and simplified this particular process of being able to obtain the loans. It probably will be ripe for abuse, and we will deal with those problems as they go along. But I think what the government has done, what the Congress has done in this particular situation, has been, look, efficiency. It's going to be, or the ability to put money in the people's hands, it's going to be the primary goal here. Okay?
Sure, to stimulate the economy where people work and money
clearly,
circulates.
And clearly what that meant is that now you have all these instances in which we have folks, driving Lamborghinis when they shouldn't be driving Lamborghinis with this money.
God.
So, and we saw that on the news. But it's government work. They're trying to do the best they can under very difficult situations, and this loan process will be a real test to that. The SBA, it's a very small government institution compared to the rest of the federal government. Okay? They were giving a fraction of these loans last year compared to the amount of loans they have given this particular year. Underwriting these loans, verifying this information is going to be a bear of a task. Okay? And a lot of folks are going to fall on the wayside. It's going to be very difficult to get Even to this day, things appealed when, for example, they deny you the amount of the loan that you decide. And I have a lot of clients who are undertaking that process. In other words, they committed a small error in the application process for one of these emergency relief loans, and it's taken months for the SBA to then now go amend the application for them to be able to obtain the right amount of the loan that they're required. So it's going to be a bureaucratic mess. It is already a bureaucratic mess in a lot of ways. So whatever we can do, so we are not essentially victims of this inevitable process, because they just don't have the staff to really handle this volume of loans. Then we really have to make sure that we help ourselves make sure that this is not something we're going to have to pay. Going forward, it's important that you also have a meeting with your banker. Okay, it's difficult, especially with COVID, to having interviews with bankers. But a lot of them are doing it in webinars. I know my particular banker has no problem picking up the phone, which is why I mean, not taking down any of the larger banks, but why really I am a firm believer in community banking. Community banking, whether it's a Bank of Coral Gables, City National Bank, whether it's professional bank. I have never been prouder of the banking community in Coral Gables in particular, but in South Florida in general, because they have really gone out of their way to help consumers. You have to look at it from this perspective, and I'm not, I'm lauding the bankers, but so sometimes that's not a great thing. But this is a 1% loan, okay? They have to underwrite.
Can't lose with 1%. I mean,
these are people who are just people like you and I, and I've picked up the phone. I've asked questions. City National Bank in particular has really answered those questions for me, and they have helped a great deal of our clients. And they stepped up in the moment in which people really needed the assistance.
So real quick question, Javier. You can't use the funds from the loan to wipe out all your other debts like credit cards, food bills. Can you use that? Can you use that to wipe it clean so that you're only paying then 1%?
So that's the problem, right? So if and that's what's happened and what I see happening with folks. So folks that come to my office and they potentially, what happens many times, they just spread either give me a link to their QuickBook accounts, or they just put a bunch of papers on my desk for me to go through the process of looking at what they have. And like many small businesses, ideally you only keep business expenses in the business books, but sometimes folks don't do that. They put Starbucks in there, they put all the things that are not germane to what they're supposed to be doing.
Their gas when they fill out their tank gasoline.
But to the extent it's done for business purposes, gas is deductible.
It's deductible.
But if you're going to go pick up your kids at school, it's not. So you have to. What I tell folks, look, if Victoria's Secret, it's not a business expense, right? I have to explain. PetSmart, it's not a business expense unless you have a guard dog. It is really, you have to understand. Section 162 of the code says any ordinary and necessary business expense. A yacht is not necessary unless you're a boat captain, right? So it has to really be germane to what you're doing. But I mean, that is a tax. That's a tax concept that also applies here in the sense that there's only so many things that would actually apply in order for their loans to be forgiven. Okay. And you have to make it easy, stupid. I mean, you have to make it simple, stupid. You cannot create a situation where you're just giving all this information because it's too complicated to the bank and let them figure it out. You want the loan forgiven. So point out, highlight, these are the expenses that I'm using. This is how I'm coming up with my amount that is forgiven. This is how much I have in rent. Here's my lease, okay? This is how much I have in mortgage. Here's a payment of how much I have in interest that I've paid. This is the number of employees: Filomena, Antonia, Periquito. Right. This is the 3 employees I have. Right. So here's their basic information. You don't have to give social securities or addresses, but at the very least identify who the employees are, how much you paid them, how much you paid them before, so that payroll can be there. It's important people to understand 401k expenses going there. Okay. If you have any type of share plan or other benefits that relate to employment, they're also allowed as expenses. If you're an owner, you're limited to only $20,833. Okay, That's the only thing. Owner is a very broad category when it comes to, for example, a C corporation that has multiple shareholders. So you got to be careful when you go ahead and make these applications that you don't put yourself in a situation where later on somebody audits your process and then you have to pay this back. Also very important, if you got one of those I don't know if you received it this way, but what happened to a lot of folks is they got, especially self-employed individuals, they got something an EIDL loan, okay, which essentially was an advance. You told the SBA, look, I need money now, okay. And what they did as a rule of thumb is that if you had the maximum you could get is $10,000, okay, and if you had 10 employees, okay, you would get the 10,000. Okay, if you had 3 employees, you would get 3,000. So it was $1,000 a head, essentially. Okay, that's the way they handled it. That goes against your forgiveness. So you will have to pay that back because the way they look at it is that amount is an advance on the loan you're going to get, even though you got it there before, but it doesn't matter. Okay, that is the way they looked at it. So those amounts will have to be paid back. You are paying them back to whatever institution you received it from. Also very important for which another reason you want to go see your accountant. This so far, and Secretary Mnuchin and everybody else has been firm on this. So far, the IRS has said that these expenses that you pay with this forgiven money are not tax deductible.
Not tax deductible. So, Javier, real quick, very interesting. And let me tell you something. I'm glad I'm not an accountant because this whole thing, I get dizzy just by listening to all the steps and all the issues regarding a loan, which is small business administration. So it tells you why you would need an accountant or certainly some help from a professional. But going back to there's elections in April in Coral Gables. Now, what do you foresee at this time in April, in April? How do you see the environment business-wise in terms of the economy? Do you see anything happening better that's getting better? There's a vaccine that's is on the verge of coming out. Will people get back to our normal self?
I am an endless optimist. I truly hope, and it is my sincere wish, that some of this assistance truly help folks, that we are over this hump of this crisis of the coronavirus, that we have leaders that actually fix the problems that we have, and
or bring us together, right?
And bring us together, but also are attentive to the things that need to happen, and that come April, come March, come January, okay, we can go back to some degree of normalcy that we recognize as what it used to be our prior lives in February of this year. I think our leaders, especially in the city of Coral Gables, especially Vice Mayor Lago, who again I want to say has truly shown a true leadership in this aspect. Who hopefully will be our mayor
he's running for mayor of Coral Gables
in April. I believe we're going to be able to put together this community. I think a lot of the businesses will come back, are going to be able to be resilient. The landlords will be able to receive their rent, and I think we will have a much brighter future. And the city of Coral Gables and South Florida in general will be able to come out of this nightmare.
Now, one of the things that, of course, the economy is affecting everybody, and in turn, and also, when you're running a campaign, there's not that much money circulating. You don't want to ask anyone from special interests.
Right.
So you have to put the word out, and I'm glad that community newspapers have stepped up to the plate to provide this public service announcements and venue for the people that are involved in business and in politics, because we do have elections coming up, and Javier Banos is a candidate for the Coral Gables City Commission, which Coral Gables is deep in my heart because I was born in Coral Gables, and the city beautiful has always had a special place. So, Javier, thank you for everything that you shared with us. It's not an easy process, the SBA loans, but this is vital to keep our economy afloat, and hopefully at this time next year during April we'll all be in better shape and back to normal as much as possible. So again, I want to thank you, Javier, and certainly community newspapers for helping us out and getting the word out, an SBA loan. So, and forgiveness, which is vital.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And yes, it will be. Everything is difficult, and especially in social distancing, running a campaign, trying to go meet folks, trying to be relevant and have a message. It's always a challenge. So I do thank community newspaper for this opportunity. But more than the campaign, folks want to have a person who cares, a person who has a commitment to public service, who wants to help people. And what I want to do in the commission, and what I would hope to do in the Gables, is an extension of my own practice, is make sure that I can provide a service to folks that they can really they can really see value in, and that hopefully improves their quality of lives and improves the life we all enjoy. So I think I appreciate the plug, and I wanted to make sure that we talked about the PPP program. But
yeah, I know that was the primary concern, and it should be. But given the fact that you are a resident of Coral Gables, a candidate, I thought it'd be a good idea to share and let people know that you care. And that's the main thing, that you care about the community.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Javier.